I want to just mention this, which is kind of not, it is connected to the message, but it ties in more with the last 4 weeks of the series we did on stewardship, right? Don't forget, giving is everything to do with the heart. And so I mentioned to you in that we were going to fill you in on many of the ministries that we support as Streams Church. And so often you may come here and you're like, well, where does, who do we give missions dollars to? Like what kind of places are we a part of? And I want to talk to you about some of those, and then I'm going to jump into the main message here this morning. And so just so some clarity, we did mention this over the last number of weeks. When you bring a tithe, as we talked about, God said to his church, he said to the people of Israel, you're robbing me in tithes and offerings. And so we talked about a tithe as a tenth of your income, and giving that to the work of ministry and your local church. And then that's used for building maintenance and salaries and upkeep and bills and all that stuff. And then when we give to missions organizations, we give an offering, which is in addition to that tithe. And so that money, 100%, that offering that goes towards missions, 100% goes towards those missions organizations. We don't keep any of it in this house. It all goes. So when we do offerings and we say, okay, we're going to take up a special offering, all of it goes to where it is intended to go. And so that's for some clarity. And so let me fill you in on some of the places that you are a part of supporting. Vanguard Bible College in Edmonton. Jeremy, that's where you graduated from. And I'm not sure if anybody else did. Maybe some of you have went there, or you've went to a Bible college at some point in your life. Doesn't have to be Vanguard, but you understand the importance of local churches having overseers to make sure the works of ministries are done. And so right now, if you weren't aware, within churches across Canada, I can't speak for the States, but I'm pretty sure it's the same there, there is a crisis. There is a shortage of pastors graduating from Bible colleges. There are way fewer of them. We've almost abandoned this word called calling, where oftentimes we're like, well, God, I only want to do what pleases me in life. And God's like, well, what about what pleases him? And so if you sense some sort of direction in your life saying, I just feel God is calling me to work in a church setting or a chaplain somewhere, and in order for me to get that education, I need to go through a school that's going to educate me in theology or a Bible college. If you're sensing in any way that, you know what, I might explore that, I'm curious, would you talk to myself or Jeremy, and we'll help you try to discover if that is what God is calling you to. And so all of us have calls on our lives, right? Some of you are called to business. Some of you are called to the medical world. Some of you are called to teaching. Some of you are called to maintenance or construction. Some of you may actually be called to do what we do. And I can go on and on and on. It was the last thing I ever wanted to do. I ran for years. I'm like, God, I'll do anything for you, but not a pastor. There is no way I'm being one of those. And so God did some really cool things in my heart. But if you are sensing any sort of direction, we support financially our local Bible college. What else do we support? We support the Pregnancy Care Center right here in Red Deer. There are a segment, there are a population, there are a group of people who face unexpected pregnancies. And they're like, where do I go from, what do I do now? Maybe they don't have great support systems at home. Maybe they're finding themselves in a crisis. Well, we support this ministry, Pregnancy Care Center, and we've had them here to share. Even a number of months ago, we had them come and just talk about what goes on there. So we, on a regular basis, not a one time a year, but monthly, we support this ministry and the one before and the ones that follow. We also give financially to Freedom Church in Stettler. That might be new to many of you because it's a recent thing we've started doing. They were in a need. They're reaching out to their community by offering community meals at their church, and it's a small church. It's been a struggle over the years, and things are turning around, and we just felt, you know what, God, we are in a position we could help them. And so we decided as leadership, we're going to start helping them financially. And so that's happening. The mustard seed right here in Red Deer, a significant portion of giving came into Streams Church that we have been able to bless the mustard seed with, and we want to help partner with them. We're in the works right now of trying to find out how we can have people from this church go and serve meals or go help pack all the snacks that go out to the kids all over central Alberta. There are, Pat, do you know how many snacks they feed to the kids? 700 a day. 15,000 a month. Yeah, so they're feeding like a lot of kids in the central Alberta area, and we want to partner with them and help them and serve them with our hands and with our feet, but also in finances. And so we support financially the mustard seed right here. We support Brian and Jay Albers they're in Turkey. They're doing a ministry. They're reaching people with the gospel of Jesus, training leaders. I mean, many of you know this couple. They are doing tremendous work overseas, and we're a part of their lives. We're a part of the ministry that happens there. We're also supporting financially Jeff and Renetta Walton. You might have seen some little write-ups about them down on our information desk. They're a new addition to Streams Church missions giving, and so they oversee Village of Hope in Malawi. And 400 plus children, they're feeding and they're helping, just starting them off in life very strongly and discipling them, introducing to Jesus. And so we also financially support them. ERDL, Emergency Relief and Development, like international, like when there's a crisis, or you hear of a country in a famine or a country going through war, ERDL is right there. And they give and they support through all kinds of means, food and resources and sponsorships. And so Streams Church, when I say Streams Church, I'm talking about you. When you give offerings and towards missions, this is what it's going toward. And so we've given this past year almost $15,000 towards missions. But listen, some of you are probably thinking, well, that's not bad for a church this size, a church that maybe has been through a lot. But can I just say this? We're just getting started. There is no way we're stopping at that amount of money. No way. We talked about it last number of weeks. God causes us, He's generous to us so that we can be generous to others. And we want to support, we want to grow. Streams Church, I'm telling you, we want to grow in our missions giving. There's no reason why we can't be giving 10 or 15% of our revenue that comes in every year. And so that's what we're working toward. That is what you are a part of. And so when you give your tithes, when you give your offerings, listen, it is going toward kingdom work. And so that's something to celebrate and be happy about, that you are a part of a church that hungers and desires to see local needs, international needs being met because of your generosity. And so it's exciting to be a part of that. We can do so much more, and I believe we will do more. Kind of falling in line with this, as I'm leaving last week, I had a conversation with one of the last stragglers out of here, and great conversation. He said this, he said, you know what, in this past series that we did on generosity and stewardship, the one word that really just has resonated with my heart is that word excel. That word excel. That word excel really means to continue getting better at something. It means to do your best, to keep growing, to be exceptional at something, to grow toward it. And Paul said, and he urged the people, he said, I want you to excel in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, in love, and in the grace of giving. And so Paul is writing this letter to the early church to help them address some of these issues. How many know that when you grow closer to God, you work toward maturity? I've actually seen newer Christians more mature than some Christians who have been around for decades. It's reality. It's not a slam. I mean, it is what it is. Some people work toward maturity. Others feel they've arrived. And so when you are mature in the Lord, you don't sweat the small stuff. You're not easily offended. There's all kinds of signs to help you understand whether you're mature or not. God's word, it convicts when you're mature. Did you know that? It doesn't offend. And so if you walk away somewhere going, I am so angry because I can't believe he shared that or said that, listen, that very well could be a sign of immaturity. Because God's word is given to challenge us and to push back at our thoughts and our thinking. And so immaturity on the other end is a sign of little growth. And a person, like I said, can be walking with God for decades and still be immature. So Paul is encouraging the church, and he said to guard ourselves from falling into selfishness and immaturity. So how do you make sure you're not falling into selfishness and immaturity? You excel. You grow more and more. And so, I'll jump into the text this morning. 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 1. As for other matters, Paul said, brothers and sisters, I mean, no, he's not talking to people outside of the church. He's talking to believers. He's talking to the church. He calls them brothers and sisters. We've instructed you how to live. Turn your televisions on. Is there still such things in newspapers? Read the newspapers. Go online. Everybody is telling you and I how to live. Everybody has an answer to how you're supposed to live. How many know that all advice is not good advice? Right? There are some good things that we learn that we're told to do, right? Eat better, of course. Exercise often. Sleep more. But there are some things that you know what, maybe it's not that good advice. Some advice out there is like, you just step on anybody you need to get to the top, to be number one. Or work harder no matter what it costs. If it costs your family, who cares? Party more. Look better. You know, join a yoga class. Read your horoscope, see a psychic, live like you have no tomorrow. Just live however you want. I mean, how many know that all advice is not good advice? So we're being taught all the time how to live. And Paul says, listen, I want to instruct you how to live. He says, brothers and sisters, we've instructed you how to do that. And this is what you ought to do. We instruct you to live in order to please God. In order to please God, let's stop for a moment. Do you think pleasing God is important? Do you think that my life is, I'm created, I'm called to please God. You're called to please God. And I know our world tells us, no, please yourself first. But God says He's first. So Paul says, we've instructed you how to live in order to please God. And it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to please everyone else, isn't it? Have you ever been called a people pleaser? Yeah. Maybe you've been called it. Maybe you see yourself as a people pleaser. Maybe you're just always nervous of what people are going to think of you, more than how you feel God will think of you. I mean, what's my purpose in life if it's not to please God? That is why I was created, to please Him, right? To please God. What does God want me to do with my life? To please Him. To please Him, right? I was listening to a radio show a while ago, and I remember just hearing this guy talking about faith. Now, faith is not a bad thing to talk about. It's very important to talk about. But the problem with this guy speaking about faith, it was almost more bent towards prosperity and almost like buy into this faith thing because it's going to benefit you. Who cares about if it benefits or pleases God as long as you're pleased? And I'm like, I tuned out very quickly, but there was a verse that he used that got my attention. And you know this verse. You probably know it well. It's in Hebrews 11 verse 6. And without faith, it's impossible to please God. And so he was talking about and without faith. And I've heard this preached many times, and you've probably heard it preached many times, right? That I need to have faith. You need to have faith. If we want to be healed, we need to have faith. Put your faith in action. Live out your faith. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Faith is foundational to our walk with Jesus. There is no denying that, and it is super important for us to understand that. People have made it rich, though, talking about faith. You know, when it comes to preaching on faith, teaching on faith, trying to show us how to live by faith, trying to give us more information on faith, there's been a lot of effort put into trying to get people to understand faith and to live by faith. And I'm hearing this, but the part that got me about this verse was the second part of it. It's impossible to please God. What about that part? What about the pleasing God part? Because at the end of the day, if that's not what I'm called to do, if I'm not called to please God, to worship God, to love God, then there's something wrong. That's why I've been created, right? See, without faith, I can't please God. Having faith pleases God. But if my desire is not to please God, then why do I even want to have faith? I don't need it. If my desire is not to please God, then what's the purpose of having faith? What's the purpose of pursuing that? And so the condition of my heart either pleases God or it doesn't. And yeah, without faith it's impossible to please God, but without love it's impossible to please God. Without kindness it's impossible to please God. Without humility it's impossible to please God. Without mercy it's impossible to please God. So instead of serving God so that he can please me, how about we take a different posture? God, I want to serve you to please you. That's a whole different world. That's a whole different way of thinking. God, that I am created to please you. I'm not created to please me. It's about you. It's always been about you. And so if my desire is to please God above anything in this life, then what does that look like? What does that look like? Now, Paul is speaking to these believers, and they understood what Paul was saying. And Paul compliments them by saying, listen, I want to instruct you how to live so that you please God. And then he says this, as in fact, the last part of this verse, he says, you are actually living it. He's like, I want to instruct you how to live in order to please God, and guess what? You're doing that. You're doing a great job at that. Fantastic. Everyone walk up, come around now. I'm going to pat you on the back. Pat me on the back, all right? Because God's like, you need to know how to live, and you're actually doing it. Great job. Ribbons for everybody. Everybody gets first place. But Paul doesn't stop there. And he says this, a verse that, or these kind of verses, we kind of skip over. Because it's easy to skip over. We're all about the faith and we're all about all that. But Paul says this, the last part of the verse. He says, now, after we've instructed you how to live, as in fact you are living, you are doing it, we ask and we urge you. I mean, no, urge is not just a suggestion. It's like you have to do this. He said, we urge you in the Lord Jesus Christ to do this more and more. More and more. Just a few verses down in this same chapter, we'll read something almost identical to it. Now about your love for one another. We do not need to write to you because you're doing a great job. For you yourselves have been taught by God to love each other. Pat on the back again. And in fact, you do love all God's family throughout Macedonia. Yet, hold on, we urge you, brothers and sisters, to what? To do it more and more. Don't park where you're at. Don't just feel like you've arrived or you're doing a fantastic job, which you are indeed doing, but listen, do it more and more. Philippians chapter 1, verse 9. And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more. Where we are may not be where we need to be. We have to do it more and more in knowledge and the depth of insight. So Paul was saying, you know what? It's great. You've come a long way, but hey, keep doing it more and more. Don't stop. Do not stop. Don't park. Don't, what does he call it? Fast forward to go? Stop at go? Is that what it is? Monopoly or something like that? Yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible. That's why I stick to my notes. That's not in my notes. Go past go. That's what it is. Paul's like, he could have said, keep up the good work, couldn't he? I mean, we want to hear that, right? We want to hear, hey, you're doing a great job. And they were doing a great job, and Paul commends them for this. But I think Paul knew something that maybe some of us aren't quite aware of, and it's this. It's dangerous to stay in the same place spiritually. Any amens to that? It's dangerous to stay where we feel comfortable. It's dangerous not to live a life that excels, that gives more and more to the things of God. One of the greatest dangers as a follower of Jesus Christ is to get to a place where you just, you do this. You plateau. And we've all been there. And maybe some of you are there right now and you didn't even know it. How many know that serving God sometimes can just become repetitive and routine? And you get to a point where you're like, okay, check the box. Yep, I've been longing to get here for years, and now that you're here, it's like, this is it? No, it's not it. There's more and more. He's called us to more and more. He's called us to excel. So what does more and more look like in your life? What does it look like? See, when you stop pleasing God, you become stagnant. You become comfortable. Anybody relate? Two of you. You become ineffective and unproductive. When you stop desiring to please God, so what does it look like to be a person that's living the more and more? What does a more and more person look like? Well, you have an appetite for God. There is a hunger. You live hungry. It's like there's an awareness that my life is not satisfied, it's not complete until I know that I have pleased God. That my life is to please God, and I'll do whatever it takes to live my life every day to please Him. It's a person of more and more, right? Colossians chapter 3, verse 2 says this. How do you know you're a person of more and more? Well, if you set your minds on things above and not on earthly things, you have a good understanding then that you may be that person who desires more and more. Because there's a purpose of having more and more. The purpose of having more and more and excelling in God isn't to puff their chest out, right? Check another box and say, look at me, I'm somebody special. No. You know when you're getting more and more when you become less. When you take on a posture of humility. When you're not about yourself, you're about others. When you're not offended over every little thing. When gossip stops taking stronghold in your life. When you begin to understand, you know what? Lord, my decisions, I want to make them based on things above and not on earthly things. And so he says, set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. How many feel, though, that we spend most of our lives maybe doing the opposite? Focusing on things below, earthly things. What are earthly things? Well, they're things that is a part of our lives, right? Our homes, our health, our recreation, our friends, our relationships, our pastime, our hobbies. These things aren't bad. But if that becomes our focus about pleasing those things instead of God, then there is a problem. If they become our focus. And so, what are things above then? Well, they are things that we do on earth that have eternal value. Things above are things that we focus on in this earth, but those things have eternal value. They matter. They count for something. That's what it is to focus on things above. And Paul was talking to these believers, and they had a life-changing experience, and their lives revolved around heavenly things above, things that have eternal value. And Paul's like, do it more and more. How many, I just can't help but, and I'm assuming you agree with me, how many know that the decisions you make in a lack of sleep are different decisions than you would make if you were fully alert and awake? Anybody else? And when we're tired and asleep, we make decisions in those moments that we will stand by. We're like, I am convinced this is the decision to make, only to find out when we're alert and awake, we're like, what was I thinking? I can't believe I said that or thought that. I remember, and I think I might have told you this one time. Back in the day, when we lived in Ontario, we would drive to Newfoundland to see my parents, and we were at that age where you are invincible. And so you do the 24-hour drive, nonstop. You plan it out so you leave, like midnight so you can get there the next night, catch the ferry, all that stuff, and so you time it out the best you can, but there's no room to stop, and so you have to drive, and we did it several times. But I'm the kind of person that can't fight sleep. Anybody else? Anybody else with me? I'm always accused, family nights or home watching TV with the kids, and all of a sudden, Dad's sleeping. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm just resting my eyes. Not sleeping. I will confess, I cannot fight sleep. And so when I go on long drives now, I get the sunflower seeds, and you get a cup, and you're just trying to do things to stay awake. I remember this one time, though, coming back from Newfoundland. It's 5 in the morning. We're driving through Quebec. The speed limit is 110, much the same as what it is here in Alberta. And so I set the cruise for 120, and we are coasting through, and I am exhausted. I am tired. And so I do what some of you might have done. I fell asleep at the wheel. Anybody else? Going 120, you fall asleep at the wheel? Yeah, I fell asleep at the wheel, and myself and Carlita's in the car, and our oldest, Bren's in the car. He's in the back seat, in the car seat, and we're coasting through, and all of a sudden, I get a jab on the arm from Carlita, wake up, and when I open my eyes, thankfully, we went off the road down into like a grassy plain type thing. There's trees on this side, but there's enough room that it's grass, and we're driving, and I see a river in front of me and a bridge. And so because I'm still half asleep, my mind says, head for the river. It's a softer landing than hitting the bridge. And so Cardi was like, this all happened in like a couple seconds. She's like, get on the road. And I'm like, I'm going for the water. And then thankfully, I have nothing to do with this, but it was almost like the car came up. I don't even remember I know I didn't do anything. It's morning, the grass is wet from the dew. If I had turned the wheel, we would have spun out. Anyway, we get up, and we survived, and we were okay. But how many know that when you make decisions when you're sleepy and tired, they could cost you your life? They're not always the best decisions to make. And yet we do the same thing spiritually, don't we? When our minds are not on things above, but they're on earthly things, we will make decisions differently than we would make if our eyes were on things above. It's just the way it is. And most of us maybe are in the situations we're in, or some of the struggles we're in, or some of the hardships and heartaches is because we've made decisions based on earthly things and not things that have eternal value. And so our decisions are going to be different. We make decisions maybe on earthly things for our families. And it's not always in the best interest of pleasing God. We make decisions for different things in life when our minds are on earthly things that might cost us. See, if my heart is on things above, my whole life changes. I make decisions based on eternal value. And so when my mind is on things above, I will give differently. Did you know that? When my mind is on things above, my speech will be different. When my mind is on things above, my attitude with my spouse will be different. When my mind is on things above, I just think different. I think more like Jesus. You think more like Jesus. When we make decisions based on things above, how I serve, how I manage my time, how just everything changes. Because now I make decisions based on eternal value. Like I make decisions for my family. I make decisions for those around me. I make decisions in every area of my life that I want it to have eternal value. So I don't know where you are in all of that. Only you know and God knows. I was talking to an old friend just a couple of days ago. And he said that he was glad that God, because I remember he was pursuing an opportunity, and he believed that God was opening a door for him in regards to employment, and he was struggling with leaving his old job. And I thought he had left his old job and went to this new job, and it would have been a better job. It would have been better financially. It would have been better in a lot of ways. But he said this. He said, you know what? I didn't take that new job because I felt God still wanted me in my old job. He wasn't finished wanting me to help people find Christ. He said that this old job, I had so much more influence. I had so much more time invested in these people. And I just feel that he said, Bill, I'm grateful that I didn't walk through that door because God still wanted me where I was. There's still people that need Jesus where I was. And I thought, you know what? Your heart, your mind is on things above. It's not on earthly things. Because how many know, right? A better salary is the way to go. You know, a job that's more convenient is the better way to go. But I'm believing that we'll probably make decisions differently when our minds are on things above than when they are on earthly things. Maybe growing in your relationship with Christ isn't really that important. I don't know where you are. Jeremy, no, never mind. I'm not going to invite you up because your string blew on your guitar, didn't it? No, that's okay. We'll. I don't want to do that. We'll maybe just get a couple of slow songs in just a minute when we're going to give you some time to respond. Maybe in your relationship with Christ, it's not. I don't know where you are. You don't know where I am. But He knows. Maybe it's not that important. Maybe you're sitting here today and you're like, I know my mind is on earthly things because my love has a limit. I'll only love so far. I only have so much forgiveness to go around. I know that maybe my love is on earthly things because I'll only be kind to a certain point. Or I'll only give myself out a certain amount of time. Like maybe you here today, you're going, you know what? I didn't know that the expectation was for me to give more and more and more of my life to God. And I don't know what that looks like for you. But maybe a good indicator is you having a transparent, honest conversation before God. Lord, have my decisions been based on earthly things or things above? And it's not like, well, I'm going to fix this today. No, this is a journey, right? And maybe you need to just, I want to give you opportunity today. You can stay where you are. You can go if you need to go. But if you need to stay and respond and say, God, I've not been living a life of more and more. I've been doing this church thing for decades. And if I were to be honest, maybe you're thinking, maybe if someone were to have a conversation with you, you'd say, you know what, I am the same person that I've been for years. Nothing's changed. Maybe if you were honest with yourself, you'd probably say, you know what, I confess, I've been serving God out of habit. It's just what I've used to doing. And you've never really had that urge to do more and more, to go more and more, to think more and more. But God's calling you to excel, to grow more and more. It's important that we all do that we have our minds set on things above. Because it is so easy to think on things below, these earthly things. And so I want to give you some time to respond today. More and more living is what pleases God, right? And Jesus teaches to love more, to forgive more, to be generous more, to serve more, to have compassion more, to speak kindness more. You get the idea. And so, what would your life look like if today you desired to please God above everything and to live that life more and more and to excel? And so before you leave today, would you have that conversation with the Lord? Would you give Him your heart? Maybe some of you today, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to surrender everything. And you have an opportunity to do that right here, right now. You don't even need to wait. You don't have to take a course. You don't have to sign up. You just need a heart that's on things above, that desires to please God. If you're in this place and you don't have a relationship with Jesus, or if you're watching today and you don't, that's your next step of more and more. That's the journey for you, that you give Him more and more of your heart, all of it.